Okay, obviously I am making a video after I don't know, maybe half a year. Although I promise to be more present in the moment, not addicted to social media, and create videos and spend more time creating videos for YouTube, which might actually be productive. I obviously did none of that, and I'll stop promising that from now on because the main reason is that my exams are also approaching. So this might be a video uh, I won't follow up very soon. So today we are going to be talking about all the books I read in 2024. So I had a target of reading 24 books in 2024 because 2024, obviously, but I could only read 22, which is as on 28th December, so it might change. But yes, out of those 22 books, I have listed all the books in my book tracker, or whatever we can call this, a book tracker. So let's talk about the books one by one. So the first book I read in 2024 is Brit Mar is Here. I don't have the physical book with me right now because I have lent it to a friend, but I will insert the cover of the book somewhere here. So Brit Mar is Here is a very good book. I think it's one of my top three books from 2024. It's from my favorite author, which is Frederick Backman, and he writes about people who are very normal. I mean, you can actually relate to such characters. So you can feel like, yes, I have seen that character somewhere in my family, neighborhood, community. But he writes about those characters in such a unique and funny way. He is a funny writer, okay? He writes in a very quirky and funny way, and he writes about human connections, emotions. He also touches some of the deep subjects in a very light-hearted and fun way, so you can actually feel good and comforted. His books are the comfort. I think comfort books is his genre, and I like his books because I am a fan of the comfort book genre, and every book he writes leans more or less in the same genre. So Brit Mary is here, a very good book. It is about a woman, Brit Mary, who has recently separated from her husband and is trying to um, live on her own after spending like all the life she remembers with her husband, cooking for him and doing everything for him. But now she is separated and she doesn't know what to do with life. And it is a very wholesome and heartfelt journey, and it's very fun. Brit Mary is here, I would rate a solid 4.5. I forgot that. So the second book I've read is One True Lops by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read the book, I don't have a physical copy of the book. Actually, I read this book which was lent to me by my sister, and later I completed the book in PDF form. This book, I mean, I like Taylor Jenkins Reid a lot from her book Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but I didn't find this book up to that caliber. I mean, this book was okay, good, and the subject matter was nothing extraordinary. I mean, there is a woman whose husband dies, and she gets married to another guy, and I don't think I am spoiling it for you. I think it's written in the blurb. Now she gets a phone call that her previous husband is alive. So after that, whatever happens, that is this book. And I mean, it was fun. I completed the book pretty soon, but uh, not as good as her other books. So maybe I would rate it 3. The third book I read Where is that book? The third book I read in 2023 is my my book tower just fell down. Is The Things We Leave Unfinished. I have a physical copy of this book, and I read this book. I started this book on 30th January, and I completed it on February 16th. So 17 days to read this book, and it was a very enjoyable read, and it has two parallel love stories. And one love story is very cliched, you know. I have seen such love stories thousands of times, but the second love story is a bit unique. It is in the past, it is during war, and yeah, it is an interesting read, but nothing too fancy. Let me see what I had written after I read this book. Mm, and there is a twist in the end which I didn't see coming, obviously. And yeah, it's a good romance book. I mean, out of all the romance books out there, I think this is a good one, but nothing extraordinary. I think I would rate it 3.5. The next book I read is Wonder. Where is Wonder? Yeah, it's here. Wonder by R.J. Palacio. It's kind of a children's book, but it was an enjoyable read. I'm telling bad about all the books I've read this year. It is a pretty easy book to read. I mean, it's mainly targeted towards children, I think. That's why it is very, very easy to read. It just flows. You don't have to look up words in a dictionary just to understand. I started reading this book on, let me see. I have not written when I started this book. So I think it's after 16th February. So I completed this book on 25th March. I took time reading this book, and I also cried at some places. And yeah, this book makes you feel thankful for whatever you have in your life, because this book is about a boy who has a disfigured face, so that he faces a lot of issues. And this book is about him dealing with everything after he goes to school. I would rate this book somewhere between 3.5 and 4, maybe 3.7. The next book I read is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and it's by a Japanese author, Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And there is a character named Kazu in this book. Maybe it's derived from the author's name, I don't know. And this book, actually, I had a lot of expectations from this book, but I had actually DNF'd this book. DNF meaning did not finish. I tried reading it. I reached somewhere in between, and I left reading it because I found more interesting books to read. Then later, I started reading from the first, and I completed it. I completed reading this book on, actually, I have not mentioned the date here. It was an okay-ish book. I it was fun to read later, but in between I was actually bored. That's why I moved on to another book without finishing it. And so this book is about a cafe which makes you travel in time, basically. But there are a lot of rules. You have to be seated in the table, you will have to be drinking a coffee, and if that coffee gets cold, after that coffee gets cold, you get transported back to time. And you can't rise out of that seat when you are in future or in past. So there are a lot of rules, and there are short stories of 3, 4, 5 different people who are traveling to time with their separate reasons for traveling in time and their own stories. So it's a collection of it, but all of it is in chronological order. It was good, maybe 3.5, but nothing excellent. The next book is the book Thief. This was recommended to me by my sister, and this was gifted to me by my dear friend. This is the first book I received as a gift. And this book also, this book is a very long book. It's of how many pages? It's of 560 something pages, so it's a very long book. It is kind of a slow burn, it doesn't grip you instantly. And I also DNF'd this book in between. I tried reading it, then I got bored, then I left. Then in 2024, actually, I read it from the beginning again, and I completed it. Actually, in the beginning, I had to force myself to read this, but in the later parts of the story, it got interesting, and I read it quickly. This story is about a girl. Uh, yeah, nothing much is written about her in the blurb, so I won't give you more information. But it's about a girl who is growing up during the Second World War in Germany, and her parents leave her for certain reasons. I think her mother leaves her in a foster home, and she is now adjusting with her new foster parents in the midst of a war. And it is a very interesting and emotional story, whatever written. And I loved the characters. I completed this book on 5th May, and it took me nearly 18 months to read this book. Uh, but not all 18 months. I read it 18 months from first starting to read this book to actually finishing it. Yeah, and I wish the friend who gifted this to me all the good things in her life. The next book I read was The Charm Offensive. I read it in PDF, that's why I don't have a physical copy, but I think it's right up there among the best books I've read in 2024. It's about this two guys, and one is a um, director, not director, maybe one is working like an assistant producing a show where the show is about, there will be one guy, a handsome guy, a prince, and maybe 10 to 12 girls will be competing to win that guy, to go to date with that guy, something like that. And there will be games, there will be backstabbing, there will be gossips, all those sorts of things. And this one guy comes as the new that guy who every girl is fighting for, and it explores how that guy and the person who is working as an assistant working for the team, how they meet and how their story progresses. And I won't reveal too much about this book, but it's a very good book. It's a very enjoyable read. I got bored nowhere. I don't think there is anything I can say wrong or misplaced or I didn't like about this book. This book is the closest to perfection. I would rate it 4.5, which is the highest till now. Then the next book I read, I also read it in PDF, or shall I say EPUB, in my phone. Uh, it is All the Lovers in the Night. So I discovered this book in a YouTuber's video where he was reading the best first pages of books. So the first page of this book was Chef's Kiss. It was the best first page I've ever read in a book, and it was like one of the best pages I've read in a book. The writing was so poetic, and it just felt like prose. And even the title of this book is so mysterious, appealing. All the Lovers in the Night. What this book is about. But when I actually read the book, it disappointed me. Like the previous book, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which is also by a Japanese writer, this is also by a Japanese writer, and I am slowly, forming an opinion about all the Japanese writers, because I also didn't like Norwegian Wood by whom? Norwegian Wood by, I forgot the guy's name, but yeah, he's also the Japanese writer, a very celebrated writer, and I hated that book in 2023. So I have started to form an opinion about all Japanese writers, which I shouldn't. I hated this book. Okay, maybe hate is a strong word, but I didn't like it as much as I expected. I finished it because it was not necessarily boring, but nothing happened in this book. Okay, there was no story, no plot, just vibes, and I'm not a fan. I would rate it a 2.5. The next book I read was A Thousand Splendid Suns, which I read it. I have as a physical copy, but I have lent it to a friend, so I can't show you right now. But that book will break you from inside, outside, everywhere. Okay, if you want to get depressed, traumatized, and if you are a woman and if you are reading this book, you are more likely to be traumatized. This book deals with very heavy topics, and if you want to get in that zone, I mean, it's by Hoshieni, so what else do you expect? But it's even more depressing and traumatizing than The Kite Runner. So read it at your own discretion, but it is a very good book, and it also sets light on the condition of women in Afghanistan and the overall condition of people living there, and how even in the most difficult times people come together um, to try to change things, try to skip out of their situation. I would rate this book a solid 4. The next book I read is Project Hail Mary, which I have right here, and I think this is the fastest book I read till now, in this list. I completed this book in some 6 days. I started this on 25th March, and I completed this on 31st March. So 6 days or 1 week, around 1 week. This is a science fiction book, a genre which I had not explored before, and this book made me fall in love with the genre science fiction. I could not put this book down. I postponed my classes. I could not take my classes just because I had to finish this. I couldn't put it down. It's so good. It reads like a thriller. It is a science fiction thriller, and there are a lot of twists and turns, and there is a lot of talk about science, mathematical equations. It is about physics professor, I think. He is on a mission. Okay, he wakes up inside a weird vessel, and he doesn't remember anything at the moment, and slowly he starts remembering everything. Why is he there? Why was he sleeping, or shall I say in a coma, until he woke up, and what he has to do now? He starts recollecting everything while exploring where he is. There are many twists in this book. Okay, a solid 4.5 book. The next book I read is Turtles All the Way Down, which I borrowed from my dear book partner friend. It is by John Green, who is the writer of The Fault in Our Stars. I have not read that book, but I have seen the movie partly, and the book is meh. Okay, I didn't get bored and DNF that book, but I read that book and I don't even remember much about that book, because I think there was a plot, but it was not interesting. It was just like, okay, yeah. It is about this girl who has some issues. I think she has anxiety and stuff like that. maybe if you can relate to this book, if you find this book in the very appropriate time, I think you'll like this book better. But I didn't like that book. I think I'll rate it a 3, not 2.5 though. It was obviously better than All the Lovers in the Night. Then the next book I read is Eleanor Oliphant. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine by Gail Honeyman. This book was very good, I think. Let me make sure. Okay, I completed this book in Biratnagar when I went to Biratnagar, and I haven't read anything. I haven't written anything here, so I don't remember much from this book. So that must tell you something, that this book is not excellent, but I think this book is in the category of very good. So it is about this woman who leads a very simple, boring, lonely life, and she just lives in an apartment. She doesn't have any sort of interaction with outside humans world. She just goes to her office, does her job, and returns back. But one day she starts talking to this one colleague of hers, and some things starts happening in her life, and everything changes, and it's about her journey of navigating all of that. And it is a pretty wholesome book. I think if you can relate to what this book deals about, that is loneliness, social anxiety, you will like this book very much. It is a very good book. I think somewhere between 3.4 and 3.5 and 4, 3.7. The next book I read is Armond. So this book also I borrowed from my dearest book partner friend, and it is also by, I think it's by Korean or Japanese writer. So I didn't have high expectations for this book, but it was good, or shall I say very good. It was in the category of very good. So it's about this boy who can't process emotions. He can't become happy. He doesn't know what to say to people. So I mean, his parents have to teach him when to say thank you, when to say sorry. So you get the point. And this boy one day makes a new friend who is just as weird as him. Both of them are referred to as monsters in the book, and the reason why you will get to know in the book. And it's about his journey, and I think it was good. I remember the ending of this book very vividly. Okay, maybe not that vividly, but I remember this book's ending more than I remember anything. So it was a pretty enjoyable read. It has a pretty interesting cover, and it is a good one-time read book. I think I will rate it somewhere between 3.5 and 4, 3.7. The next book I read is The Invoice, which I read in my phone. It is a short book, and it is a wild book. I've never read any such book in my life, and I am not sure if I will. So it's about this person who one day receives an invoice of bill, um, invoice or bill which has a very large amount. Okay, like 10 crore rupees, and this guy now has to find out if that bill is mistakenly addressed to him or not, or if it is addressed to him, then why, what did he do to have to pay like such an exorbitant amount of money. And it is a very interesting book. I won't say you anything else because it will spoil the fun of reading this book, and I think it's a very easy read, a very short book, and you have to read this book, and it's a very good book. Definitely a 4. The next book I read is The Art of Racing in the Rain. There is also a movie on this book, and this book, I didn't like it very much, mainly because of the reason I expected I would like this book very, very much. And this book wasn't up to the standard I expected. So now, because I'm disappointed, I perceive this book as even as of even lower standard. But this book is good, maybe even 3.7 to 4, let's say 3.8. It is about a dog. The dog is the narrator of the story, and the dog has gone on a journey with his master owner, who is a race car driver, and he has seen his youth, his love life, his wedding, and all the complications that come with it. And it is narrated by the dog. And if you have a dog, maybe this book will appeal to you more and you will like it more. But since I don't own a pet, it is only a 3.7 or 8 for me. I thought I would enjoy this much more, but I enjoyed it, but not as much as I thought I would. The next book I read is The Humans. What a book. I read this book on my phone. I wanted to buy a physical copy of this book so bad, even after reading it, because it was so good. Okay, I just want to collect it and sew the book off in my showcase. It's about this alien who gets sent to the earth with a mission to do something, and we get to see the aliens' perspective on humans, like the idiosyncrasies, the peculiarities of being human, how it seems so natural, so um, casual to us, but from a third eye perspective, it gets so interesting. Like our daily life, everything happens, everything we do, if we get to see that from a third eye perspective, a third person perspective, who is not obviously inured to seeing all of this, then we get some pretty interesting perspectives. And it is kind of a science fiction philosophical book, and a very interesting. It is also kind of a thriller. It is written by Matt Haig, who has written The Midnight Library, and I like this book more than his that book. Definitely a 4.5 book, one of the best books I read this year. The next book I read is The Rosie Project. This book was on the recommendation list of Bill Gates, who recommended 5 books, and this book was on that list, and this was the only non-fiction book on that list. So you get the point. It is about this uh, peculiar, weird human being who is a geneticist, a genetics professor at a college, and he figures out a way to find a perfect partner by designing a questionnaire, and he writes every question like, "Do you smoke?" And if yes, I smoke, it will fetch you -5 points. If I don't smoke, it will fetch you +5 points. So he designs a questionnaire, and based on the marks you score, he will evaluate uh, how what's that word? How good. Okay, I didn't find that word. How good a partner you will be to him. And he meets this girl who is who, according to his questionnaire, is a very bad partner to him. Okay, but they go on a journey, a very interesting one. Yeah, and the journey is very enjoyable. It is a very fun read, and I like this book very, very much. I think it's like one of the top tier romance rom-com genre of books. A movie is also going to be made on this book, but we don't have much information on that. A very good book, a solid 4.5 book, one of the best books, right up with The Humans. and Brit Mar is here, and the Charm Offensive, and Project Hail Mary. Yeah. The next book I read, which is also a 4.5 star read, is The House in the Cerulean Sea. It is a mystical fantasy book which is about a guy who works in a government agency which inspects all the orphanages around the country to see if they are functioning well, they are taking care of the children well, and he's like an inspector of sort. So one day, for an assignment, he visits a castle where magical children live. Okay, and a wild ride, a wild, fun, emotional journey starts after that, which is very beautiful. It reads, I read that book so quick. It reads somewhat like, not like a thriller, but you can read it very quickly. Okay, it's a very enjoyable book. You won't get bored reading that book, and but you can get emotional reading that book. I cried multiple times while reading that book. So it's a very good book. The next book I read was, I read it on my phone, What to Do When I'm Gone. It's a short book, and it's a very sweet memento by a mother who is advising her daughter what to do after she dies. So there is a day by day progress. So day 1 you do this, day 2 you do this, day 500 you do this. So it's funny, quirky, emotional. It's a very good piece to read if you have couple of hours to spare. It's a short book and it reads quite easy and smooth, and it deals deep topics like death very well in a light-hearted manner. The next book I read is All the Light We Cannot See. This is also a gift. This is the second book gift I have received, and I can compare this book to The Kite Runner, meaning that this book is also a slow burn. It is even slower burn than The Kite Runner. Sorry, not Kite Runner, The Book Thief. Sorry, I was mentioning The Book Thief. It is even slower burn. It is also in the same context. It's a story of a blind girl and a boy. The girl lives in France. The boy lives in Germany, and in midst of the Second World War, how they connect between after before the war, and how their individual and journey together progresses in that context, in that scenario. It's an interesting book. I think the last 100 pages I devoured. It was very interesting, but the rest, I mean, it's a pretty long book, okay, and it's not like a very thriller like book. It has a mature classic literature style of writing. Maybe all the other books have spoiled me, but I had somewhat of a hard time reading this, but it was worth the effort. It is a very good book if you want to know wars and how they affect people's life up close. I read this book for, yeah, somewhere between 4 and 4.5, maybe 4.2. And the next book I read was Dark Matter. Where is that book? Dark Matter. This is the book I have read the fastest. I completed this book in 2.5 days. It is a very interesting book. It is a thriller, a science fiction thriller, and you can't put this book down. It is even more interesting and more fast read than Project Hail Mary, which is already a very interesting book. And I think this is a very good book. It has such great twist, and but Somewhere in the ending, I found it missing something. I can't point my fingers at what, but something was missing. That's why I can't rate it 4.5. It's somewhere in the 4 category, maybe even 3.8 category, not even 4, maybe 4. Yeah, 4, just because I completed it in 2.5 days. Then the next book I read is The Answer Is No by Frederick Backman, the 22nd book or the last book of the year till now. That book is a weird book, maybe not the greatest Backman has written, and it is, yeah, it is a weird book. It is targeted to be a humorous or funny book, and the humor works sometimes, and most of the time it works. And there are such weird situations, for just to evoke the humor. And if you think about it, will such a thing happen in real life? You may not like the book, but if you just believe the book, if you have suspension of disbelief, suspension of belief, whatever they say, while reading that book, and you get invested in the world he creates. I mean, Frederick Backman is known to create somewhat of a quirky, weird world, which is not necessarily um, equivalent to the real world. But I think this book creates the weirdest kind of world amongst all the of his books. So I mean, it's a good book. It's an average book. I completed this book recently, and I didn't have a lot of time to think about it, so I'm still forming an opinion about this book. Maybe a 3.5. It is a very short read, less than 100 pages, I think. And it is a humorous book. If you have a couple of hours to spare, decent one-time read, but not the strongest work by Frederick Backman. So yeah, those are all the 22 books I read in 2024. If I have to recommend you books, it would be Brit Mar's Year, 4.5, The Charm Offensive, 4.5, Project Hail Mary, uh, The Humans, the Rosie Project, The House in the Cilian Sea. And honorable mentions go to The Book Thief, A Thousand Splendid Suns, and All the Light We Cannot See. Yeah, those are the honorable mentions. I think the book I like the least I read this year is obviously All the Lovers in the Night, which was not a bad book, but I read other good, excellent books. That's why this book I would rank the lowest, which is also pretty evident from the fact that it is scored 2.5 only. So, enough talking about books. It's already 40 minutes. So, keep reading. Yeah, some reading can do wonders to your brain. You can travel to places you can never go, you can live the lives you can never live in this lifetime. You can do those things with the characters of the book which you may never do in this lifetime. So don't waste your time. Start reading books. Like, even if a person starts reading from like age 6 or 7 till he dies, he still can't even read 1% of the books that have been published. There is so much knowledge, so much stories, so many novels, so many characters we haven't even read, met, experienced yet. So get into reading as quickly as you can. And if I have to recommend a book to a beginner, so that they can get into reading, it would definitely be one of these books, Project Hail Mary and Dark Matter. And also honorable mention to The Rosie Project, which is a very enjoyable read which turned my one non-reader friend into a reader friend. So that's why. So yeah, keep reading and bye.